Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something real today. Something most people don't say out loud. You want to make a man love you madly? You want to get him off his high horse and have him chasing you for once? Then don't cater to his ego. Hurt it. Yeah, I said it. Hurt his ego and he'll love you like crazy. Men are wired differently, where women often connect through emotion, through communication and nurturing. Men are often driven by something else entirely. Their ego. And ego isn't just about arrogance or pride. It's deeper than that. Ego for a man is like armor. It's how he sees himself in the world. It's how he measures his worth. It's the voice in his head saying, you got this. You're the man. You matter. Now, when that ego is constantly stroked, constantly fed, he gets comfortable. He thinks he's in control. He walks like he owns the room, talks like he's untouchable, and lives like he can't be replaced. And sometimes women unknowingly feed this cycle. They give him attention, validation, compliments, agreement, even when he doesn't deserve it. They do it hoping it will bring them closer, but in reality, it only makes him colder. It creates imbalance. He gets lifted up while she slowly shrinks herself down. But something powerful happens when a woman stops feeding that ego, when she challenges it just enough to make him reflect. Not to destroy him, not to belittle him, but to awaken him. When you stop agreeing with every word he says, when you stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny, when you stop being available the second he calls, that's when you shake his foundation. That's when you tap into something he didn't know he needed. Resist it, not in a toxic way, but in a confident way. The kind of resistance that makes a man check himself. The kind that says, if you want access to me, you've got to bring more than just charm. I need depth. I need effort. I need truth. That kind of energy, that drives a man crazy because now he's not getting what he's used to. He's not in full control. He's not the center of your universe, and that shakes his ego. It stings. But it also pulls him in. Why? Because men chase what challenges their sense of self. If he feels too sure of you, he loses excitement. But if he feels unsure, he gets focused. It's how competition works in his brain. He wants to win. And when he doesn't feel like he's automatically winning with you, he starts strategizing, adjusting, and thinking differently. That's where real love starts to form. Not when he feels worshiped, but when he feels intrigued, even a little insecure. Men respect what challenges them. They remember what hurt their pride just enough to make them want to grow. And ironically, the woman who bruises his ego just a bit by standing firm in her standards, by not reacting emotionally every time, by being okay with walking away, becomes the woman who captures his heart the deepest. Not because she played games, but because she showed him that she's whole on her own. And that shakes everything he thought he knew about relationships. Men are conditioned to chase, to conquer, to prove themselves. So when a woman walks in and doesn't need to be conquered, doesn't need saving, doesn't fall at his feet, she becomes unforgettable because she disrupted his ego. She made him question himself. She forced him to look in the mirror and ask, am I enough for her? Can I rise to her level? That right there is the ego wound that turns into admiration. That's the spark that ignites devotion. And that's how love moves from surface to soul. So understand this, his ego isn't your enemy, It's just the gatekeeper. And when you learn how to respectfully challenge it, not by tearing him down, but by lifting yourself up, you shift the entire dynamic. You don't have to insult him to wake him up. You just have to stop giving him everything without asking if he earned it. That alone will speak louder than any words ever could. Hurting a man's ego doesn't mean attacking him, tearing him down, or making him feel worthless. It's not about being toxic or manipulative. It's about shaking him out of that comfort zone that his pride has built around him. Most people misunderstand what ego really is, especially in men. Ego isn't just arrogance. It's a deeply rooted sense of identity, built on how a man sees himself, how he thinks others see him, and how much control he feels he has. It's like a mental mirror reflecting back who he believes he is. Powerful, smart, needed, admired. But sometimes that mirror lies. It tells him he's doing just fine, even when he's slacking in the relationship. It tells him he's the best man you'll ever get, even when he's not showing up for you. That's when the ego becomes dangerous, not just to you, but to him too. So when I say hurt his ego, I'm not talking about being mean. I'm talking about breaking that illusion of invincibility. I'm talking about sending a message. You don't get to be lazy with my heart. You don't get to treat me like a backup plan and still think I'll be here smiling. It's about disrupting his pattern. When he expects you to always text first and you stop doing it, when he expects you to tolerate his excuses and you finally say, that's not good enough, that's ego disruption. When he's used to you being available on his terms and you suddenly prioritize your own peace instead, now his ego is shaking. And that shakeup, that's where things start to shift. You see, most men walk around thinking they're irreplaceable in a woman's life, especially when she's been loyal, patient, and forgiving. But when she changes the tone, when she starts moving like someone who knows her worth and isn't afraid to walk alone, now the game changes. Because his ego is used to comfort. It's used to being safe. And when you remove that safety, he's forced to reassess his role in your life. He has to ask himself, what am I doing wrong? And more importantly, what if I lose her? That question, that possibility of loss is where ego meets reality. The truth is, a man's ego thrives on routine. He gets comfortable. He gets used to things being a certain way. But love doesn't live in comfort. Growth doesn't happen when everything stays the same. A man doesn't evolve by being constantly praised, accepted, and babied. He evolves when he faces the discomfort of not measuring up, when he realizes the woman he loves isn't easily impressed, and when he understands that love without effort is not love at all. That's when he starts growing. That's when he starts being lazy and starts becoming intentional. And it only happens when his ego takes a hit. That's why the strongest love stories often start with a woman refusing to play small just to protect his pride. It's easy to let things slide. It's easy to bite your tongue and stay quiet so he doesn't feel bad. But where does that lead? A relationship where you're resentful and he's unaware. That's not love. That's survival. But when you start setting the tone, when you speak up, stand up, and step back when needed, you send a message that shakes his core. You're not doing it out of cruelty. You're doing it because you believe in his potential to rise. You're doing it because you know that if he truly values you, he'll accept that challenge. And if he doesn't, then he was never your match to begin with. A little bruise to the ego can be a wake-up call. It reminds him that he doesn't automatically have your heart on lock. And sometimes it takes that discomfort to spark the fire again. Because when he starts working to earn your presence, when he feels the pressure to meet your standards, when he sees that you won't tolerate emotional laziness, that's when the love gets real. That's when he falls harder, deeper, and more madly in love than ever before. There's a quiet kind of power in the woman who doesn't chase. She's not loud about it. She doesn't scream for attention, but her presence is felt. She walks into a room and changes the energy without saying a word. That's the kind of woman who challenges a man without even trying. She doesn't feed his ego every second, and she doesn't fall into the trap of proving her worth to someone who's still trying to figure out his own. You see, men are used to being chased. They're used to being validated, especially in a world where social media floods them with compliments and attention. They start believing that they don't have to do much to keep a woman's love. But when he meets a woman who doesn't operate on that same level, a woman who doesn't fall for surface charm, who doesn't get impressed by potential without action, that's when his ego gets rattled, and that's when he starts paying attention. When a woman stops trying to win a man over and starts simply being herself, that's when she becomes irresistible. A man is drawn to mystery, to challenge, to something he can't predict. The woman who doesn't chase but instead chooses herself every time makes him wonder. He begins to question his position. He starts noticing her silence, her absence, her ability to thrive without needing his validation. That silence speaks louder than 1,000 words. It says, I'm not afraid to lose you if keeping you means losing myself. And that message cuts through a man's ego like a blade. It makes him ask himself what he's really offering. Men want to feel needed, but what they respect most is a woman who doesn't need them. She chooses them. She's got her own path, her own rhythm, her own value system. And she doesn't sacrifice that just to make someone feel better about themselves. That kind of woman holds the power because she doesn't hand it over. She's not cruel. She's not distant out of spite. She's simply centered in her own worth. And for a man who's used to being chased, that kind of woman becomes unforgettable. Not because she's trying to be different, but because she refuses to be anything but real. The woman who challenges a man doesn't do it with attitude or games. She does it by living with standards. She doesn't tolerate inconsistency. She doesn't explain basic respect. She doesn't reward bare minimum behavior with maximum effort. And when a man realizes that she's not easily swayed by sweet talk or short-term promises, he starts adjusting. He starts stepping up. Not out of fear, but out of admiration. Because deep down, every man wants a woman who makes him better. A woman who calls him higher just by being who she is. The man realizes that he can't control her with compliments, that his charm has an expiration date, that his access depends on his behavior. That's when he really starts falling. That's when love gets serious, because now it's not about ego anymore. It's about connection. It's about respect. It's about effort. The woman who challenges him becomes the one he thinks about when he's alone. She's the one he doesn't want to lose because she made him work. She made him reflect. She made him grow. And that's what separates her from the rest. She's not the one who needed him to feel whole. She was already whole when he met her. That's why she didn't chase. That's why she stood firm. That's why she made him prove himself. And in doing that, she became the kind of woman a man can't forget, the kind who doesn't just touch his heart, but wakes up his soul. When a man feels replaceable, everything about the way he moves starts to shift. It's easy for him to fall into patterns when he believes he has you locked in, when he assumes that no matter what he does or doesn't do, you'll still be there, still loving him, still forgiving him, still answering the phone on the first ring. That assumption creates complacency, and when complacency sets in, the effort disappears. He stops trying to impress you, stops listening the way he used to, stops showing up with the same intensity that he had in the beginning. Why? Because in his mind, he already has you. He thinks he's won. But the moment he realizes that you're not emotionally dependent on him, that you're capable of walking away, that you know your value and won't settle for less, his entire approach changes. Men are wired to protect what they feel they can lose. The second he senses that your loyalty is not blind, that your love is not unconditional when it comes at the cost of your self-worth, he begins to wake up. He starts to reevaluate how he's treating you. The very thought that you could be fine without him puts his ego on edge. It's not about jealousy. It's about the shift in power. Suddenly, he's no longer in control of how the relationship flows, and that shift makes him work harder, try deeper, and appreciate what he took for granted. That's when you start to see change. Not the temporary kind, but the kind that's rooted in realization. The problem is many women stay too long trying to prove their love. They stay hoping he'll wake up one day and finally get it. They think if they just love him harder, support him more, and sacrifice themselves long enough, he'll change. But love doesn't open a man's eyes. Loss does, or at least the fear of it. A man has to feel like he could lose you in order to truly start valuing you. He has to see that your life doesn't revolve around him, that your happiness isn't tied to his presence. That realization humbles him. It forces him to ask himself the hard questions. Am I really doing my part? Is she slipping away? Have I taken her for granted? And when a man starts asking those questions, that's when growth begins. That's when accountability kicks in. That's when he stops seeing you as a sure thing and starts seeing you as someone he's lucky to have. Because now your presence is no longer guaranteed. Now he knows he has to show up, speak truth, and match your energy. The chase returns not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're standing firm in your worth. That firmness, that refusal to be treated like an option is what reminds him that you are a prize, not a placeholder. Too many men confuse consistency with comfort. They think just because you're there today, you'll be there tomorrow no matter what. But the moment you start moving like someone who is ready to walk if things don't change, that's when the fear of replacement hits. And fear isn't always a bad thing. It can be a motivator. It can be the spark that brings the effort back. It can be the push that turns a passive man into an active partner. And he feels like he might lose something valuable. He fights to protect it. So don't be afraid to pull back. Don't be afraid to show him that you can stand tall on your own. Because when he sees that strength, that independence, that silent confidence, it shakes his ego in all the right ways. And that shakeup is often exactly what it takes for him to start loving you madly, not because he has to, but because he finally realizes he could have lost the best thing he ever had. There's a big difference between what a man wants and what a man values. A man might be attracted to beauty, drawn to charm, and excited by instant attention. But when it comes to real value, the kind that lasts beyond infatuation, it's not about what's easy, it's about what's earned. Men are natural competitors. From childhood, they taught to chase, to conquer, to prove themselves. So when something comes too easy, too fast, without any resistance, it doesn't trigger that deep wiring that makes them lock in. What triggers it is the challenge, the feeling that he has to bring his best self to the table if he wants to keep you. That's where real love grows. Not in the moments when he feels he already has you, but in the moments where he feels like he needs to step up to deserve you. A man might enjoy the attention of someone who constantly praises him and gives him all her time, but he will fall deeply for the woman who makes him earn her presence. And earning doesn't mean jumping through hoops or playing childish games. It means consistently showing up, emotionally investing, proving his words with actions, and aligning his behavior with the standards she holds when he has to work for her love. When it doesn't come cheap or without effort, he starts to appreciate it more. He starts to guard it, protect it, and nurture it. The more he works for it, the more he fears losing it. And the more he fears losing it, the harder he tries to keep it. It's human nature to value what requires effort. We don't cherish what we take for granted. That's why men will overlook the one who gave everything too easily and chase the one who made them question themselves. Not because she played hard to get, but because she simply didn't lower her standards. She didn't hand over her heart to someone who hadn't shown he was ready to carry it. She didn't compromise her peace for someone who only brought her confusion. That kind of woman doesn't have to demand respect. She commands it by the way she moves, by the way she holds her space, by the way she requires consistency. When a man realizes that access to your heart isn't guaranteed, he wakes up. He starts putting in the effort he once thought wasn't necessary. He starts thinking before he speaks, showing up when he says he will, doing things he never did before, not because he's being forced to, but because he knows this kind of love doesn't come around often. He knows that the woman in front of him is not the type who settles, and that knowledge humbles his ego and activates his heart. It makes him want to rise to the occasion, to become the man she can be proud of, the man who matches her energy and respects her boundaries. It's easy to fall for someone who makes you feel good, but staying in love with someone who requires you to grow, that's the real work. And the man who's ready for that journey will embrace the challenge. He won't complain about the effort. He'll feel honored to make it, because in earning your love, he finds purpose. In fighting for your attention, he finds direction. In knowing that you won't settle for less, he finds inspiration to be more. That's the power of being a woman who makes a man earn her. It's not about withholding love or creating distance just to make him chase. It's about knowing your worth so clearly that he either rises to meet you or falls away trying. And the one who chooses to rise, he's the one who will love you madly, not because you're beautiful or kind or loyal, but because you challenged him to become better. And that kind of love changes a man forever. A man falls the hardest for the woman who doesn't flatter his ego, but instead forces him to look at himself differently. Most people think men fall for the woman who adores them, praises them, gives them all the love in the world with no hesitation. And while that kind of love feels good, it doesn't always make a man stay. What makes him stay, what makes him fall madly in love, is the woman who causes a shift inside him. The woman who, without even trying, makes him question if he's truly enough. Not in a damaging way, but in a powerful way, because when a man meets a woman who doesn't just accept who he is, but who quietly challenges who he could become, something inside him wakes up. It's not insecurity, it's awareness. And awareness is what transforms a man. A man can get attention anywhere these days. Compliments are everywhere. Validation is easy. But genuine respect, the kind that comes from a woman who won't settle for half-hearted effort, is rare. And when he meets that kind of woman, his ego feels it. She's not impressed by his talk, not swayed by surface level charm. She doesn't care about who he pretends to be. She wants to see who he really is. And when she makes it clear that only his truth, not his tactics, will earn her time, he starts thinking differently. That's when the shift happens. That's when he begins to reflect instead of react. That's when he realizes he has to dig deeper, show up stronger, and become more present if he wants to keep her attention. She's not doing this to manipulate him. She's not playing hard to get. She's not trying to hurt him. She simply refuses to water herself down just to protect his pride. She refuses to give all of herself to someone who hasn't proven he's ready for it. She's not mean, but she's honest. She's not cold, but she's aware. And that awareness creates pressure. The kind of pressure that turns a boy into a man. Because if he truly wants her, he knows he can't stay the same. He knows he can't lead with ego. He has to lead with intention. He has to be willing to face himself, to unlearn his bad habits, to communicate with clarity, and to love without playing games. That's the price of her presence. A woman like that doesn't ask for more, she is more. And that alone sets a standard. When she walks away from disrespect, when she doesn't tolerate inconsistency, when she speaks her truth calmly and walks in her peace, it shakes him. It makes him realize she won't be moved by pressure. She only responds to presence. He can't just say the right thing. He has to be the right thing. He can't just promise change. He has to show up changed. That's what makes her different from the rest. And that difference, that's what makes him fall. Men may enjoy the chase, but what they crave is meaning. They want to feel like the woman they love sees them, but not just the surface version, the full version, their potential, their flaws, their growth. The woman who mirrors that back to him without judgment, but with high standards, becomes unforgettable because she doesn't just love the man he is now. She loves him in a way that requires him to level up. And when he rises to that challenge, when he becomes more than he thought he could be because she believed in more, that's when love becomes permanent. He doesn't fall madly for the woman who gives him comfort. He falls for the one who gives him clarity, the one who shows him how powerful love can be when it's rooted in truth, not just attraction. The one who's not afraid to say, I love you, but I won't lose myself to keep you. That's the kind of woman who leaves a mark on a man's soul. That's the kind of woman who doesn't just make him feel good.